All right, guys, we're talking about the constitutional compromises. Yesterday we looked at the Great Compromise with how representation would be figured out with Congress and the legislative branch. We also talked, so we can go through that here. That's where made both the big states and the small states happy. With representation, you had Roger Sherman, the bicameral Congress. You have the House of Representatives, which is based on population, elected every 2 years. You also have the Senate, which is equal representation. Each state gets 2 senators. And so that kind of made the small states happy. Yesterday, we talked about the 3/5 compromise for representation and taxation reasons. They're going to count slaves as 3/5 of a person. About a third of the South's population were slaves, so that was a big deal. We also talked about the slave importation clause, how they're going to allow it for 20 more years, and then it was going to be outlawed, and then helping catch runaway slaves for the South. Today, what we're going to talk about is the Electoral College. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Electoral College is the only system we use. It only elects the President of the United States, POTUS, right? It's how we elect the head of the executive branch. There are 2 points of views. So one is that, the direct elections, the democratic theory that, hey, let the voters, one vote, one person, one vote, to elect the president directly. That is not how we do it, but there's one point of view that way. The other one is that the elitist kind of theory is that voters are stupid, that we should have Congress or state legislators pick the president, that they would know more and know better for the people. You got to remember, too, this was like the 1700s, and they figured that a farmer in Tennessee or Georgia might not know the candidates, and so why should they get a say in electing this one person? News didn't travel like today, and so they figured that, maybe that's not the best way to elect a president. And so some framers thought voters were stupid and couldn't be trusted. And they figured that, and what you could write down for number 3 is that Congress or state legislatures should pick the president. Okay? But they came up with this system called the Electoral College. It's just a group of electors that are selected. Voters select electors from each state, and then they go and pick, usually they're state political leaders. They go and pick the president. Now, if whoever wins a majority in the state, so if you're in Kansas or California, if you win by one vote, a political party, like if Kamala Harris, which she won California, if she wins by one vote or a million votes, she gets all the electors from that state. It's a winner-take-all system. So the electors, they will be Democratic at that time, and they will go say, our state picked Kamala Harris, and they get all 55 electors of California. In another state like Texas, they have 38 electors. If Donald Trump won in 2024, and so all 38 electors chose. They send Republican electors, and they chose Donald Trump. How do you figure out the number of electors each state is? It's based on the number of senators, which are 2 for every state, plus the number of representatives. So Nebraska is worth 5. We have 3 representatives and, of course, 2 senators, and that's how we figure out that number. They did not really plan on political parties. There were no political parties at the start of our country. George Washington technically was not part of a political party. They're going to start to develop really quickly in the second and third elections, and so. But anyway, that's just something to think about. So that's the solution. They didn't know who should pick the president, so they figured electors could from each state, and that the Electoral College would pick the president. Next thing we're going to get into, the majority of this, is the Bill of Rights. So after the convention, one thing, each state had to go and ratify. They wanted 9 out of the 13 states to ratify this new government. There's a lot of different groups of people. You have southern states, you have northern states, you have anti-federalists, you have federalists who wanted a more powerful government, some that didn't. And so it was going to be tough to ratify this. You needed 9 out of 13. That's number one on your deal. Federalists were the ones that were in favor of this new government. They wanted weaker state governments and a stronger national government. That's why they're called Federalist. The Anti-Federalists did not love this new idea of government. They wanted a weaker national government and stronger state governments. They wanted states to have more say than the federal government. They were scared that the citizens' rights were not protected. And so, but anyway, during this time, you had people that were talking how your state needs to ratify this. They passed the Federalist Papers, or they write these Federalist Papers, 87 essays in newspapers to kind of get the people in the United States to want to adopt this and pass this and approve this. They were written by Alexander Hamilton. He wrote a majority of the essays. James Madison helped write some, and so did John Jay. But anyway, they're trying to convince the people to ratify this new Constitution. This is after the Constitutional Convention. What really sells it to the Anti-Federalists is a guy named Patrick Henry and George Mason wanted to make sure that our individual rights were protected. And so they passed the Bill of Rights. It's the first 10 amendments in the Constitution. That's where you get like your freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, freedom of the press. That's where you get no unreasonable searches and seizures. You get no cruel and unusual punishments. Okay, you have a right to a lawyer and a trial, and you have due process of law. Those are the types of things we're going to cover in a couple chapters. We'll go more in depth on them, but this is what convinces the Anti-Federalists, like, okay, as long as our rights are protected, we're kind of okay with this new government, this new powerful federal government, as long as the federal government can never take away these rights, these Bill of Rights, that freedom of speech, religion, all those things, okay? The Federalist Papers plus the Bill of Rights is what convinces the states to ratify the Constitution. All 13 states end up ratifying the Constitution. That ends our lecture. Again, the 4 compromises that we talked about the last 2 days, the Great Compromise with Congress, the 3/5 Compromise, and all the issues with slavery that they kind of kicked that down the road, the Electoral College, how to select the president, and then, of course, the Bill of Rights to protect our individual rights and freedoms that we hold dear to our heart even to today. So that ends the lecture.